allegiance to the flag of the United
States of
of
America,
America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice
for all.
for all. This meeting is recorded for district purposes. It is or may be published in part or in its entirety on the district's website without the express permission of meeting participants. Can I have a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Angus,
Here.
Mr. Campbell, Mrs. Curtis,
Here.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Here.
Mrs. Manganello,
Here.
Mr. Metz,
Here.
Miss Pedigo, Miss Young,
Here.
Mrs. Fisher,
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. Can I have the sunshine law, please?
The Board of School Directors held an executive session on Wednesday, March 10th to discuss personnel matters subject to attorney-client privilege and other confidentiality laws, litigation or threatened litigation matters.
Thank you. We do not have any amendments to the agenda this evening. We have presentation by Mrs. Addie Lucatordo. Addie.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. How are you? Excuse me, we're here to talk about a few things. We're talking about the review of spectator numbers, and we're talking about mask requirements for our spring sports. The state came out with a change of capacity, and now we can do up to 15% indoors and 20% outdoors. And so that changed our capacity for some of our buildings, and I shared those numbers with the board so that you have those. We also primarily have our volleyball people competing inside. And so I reached out to the other school districts that play boys volleyball in our section and asked them what they would be doing. And the majority, if not all of the teams that we play, will not require their student athletes to wear masks during competition. They, which is what you folks voted on as a change for the boys basketball and girls basketball team in the WIBIL tournament. They will, however, wear masks. Half of them will wear masks if we request that they mask and we are masked during competition. And as far as visiting fans, about 75% are going to allow at least 1 or 2 visiting fans at the high school level. So we need to talk about what your concept is on fans coming and whether you want our student athletes to be masked during competition, during play. We could still request that the coaches keep them on and the players on the bench keep them on. It would be only during live play that the student athletes would remove their masks. Do you have any questions?
Addie, when does the season begin?
The season, they started practice on Monday. The season begins, most teams are competing in the week of 3/25.
Okay, board members, any questions for Addie?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Angus.
Nothing at this time.
Thank
Don't
you.
have any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Curtis.
So Mrs. Fisher, I think what we're going to need to know then from the board is the following. I think if I heard Addie correctly, and thank you for that, Addie, you're saying that about half the teams have agreed that if we they would wear masks and half did not. So, I mean, I think the decision here has to be, are we going to encourage that and ask people to do it? However, if they're unwilling to do it, will we still allow our student athletes to play or not? I mean, I think that's what we need to know. And also for our own, will we be asking our own teams, no matter what, to always wear a mask? I mean, those are the 2 first things, and then we can get into spectators.
Yes. Board, any questions on those issues? Athletes wearing the masks, coaches being masked, masks on while on the bench. Any thoughts? Anybody?
I think our coaches should wear a mask on the bench.
Thank you, Ms.
I think
Jones.
anybody sitting on the bench and coaching wise should have them on.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. I agree as well.
I agree too.
Mrs.
Okay, so
Manganello, did I?
wear the masks, just to clarify that point, our team and our bench will wear masks. We have that down. We're on the playing court, will our team have to wear masks? I mean,
Any thoughts there? Does anybody have any? Addie, have you spoken to the coach at all as far as how difficulty wise?
Volleyball, it's much similar to your activity level as basketball. The boys and girls did a tremendous job working to maintain their masks, but it is difficult. We've talked about the differences where different sports where it's dangerous to wear masks, like wrestling, like our cheerleaders flipping in the air, and the danger there. There's always a danger that the mask could move and get into your line of vision. What we've seen more though is the mask going down under their chin. Coach Freed is willing to do what the board asks him to do.
Patty, did we not have the girls volleyball wear mask? This is for boys, correct?
Correct, yes.
So we
Yes.
already have made these decisions in the fall for girls volleyball when that was then.
Yes, ma'am.
What did we have them do then?
We had them wear masks, and we've had them wear masks the whole season with basketball as well. The change that was made for the basketball tournament was allowing us to play against unmasked teams. So do you want to continue that concept that we will ask our student athletes to wear masks, but for example, in the WIPIAL, if somebody didn't want to wear masks, we were willing to play them. So that's where you sit right now. Do you want to continue that, or do you want to change? Is that clear, Dr. Pascarella?
That is.
Yep, I think that's.
I would like it to stay as is.
I think what we did in the fall is what we should do now.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And the other.
So the only thing just let me make sure we get that clear. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
Go ahead.
What we're going to say is all of our student athletes will just taking a note. And the only other thing is you don't, in the winter, Addie was able to talk to folks and they were pretty much 100% willing to say if we required them to wear masks, they would. In the spring, we're at about 50% saying they were willing to do that. So the decision now is, okay, we know that our coaches, basically all of our athletes, whether you're on the court or off the court or on the field or off the field, will wear masks. We will ask the teams, I'm assuming, if they will wear a mask, right? I mean, the visiting team, we would ask them to please wear a mask. The only question is now, if the 50% say they're unwilling to do that, is your position that we are still allowed to play the game?
And we did allow them to play in the fall, correct?
In the fall season, we did not play teams that would not mask.
We only allowed.
You know what? Let me correct something. I don't think we were masking in the fall as much. The mask mandate for play came up in November. So that would have been after volleyball. So I think we were masking to practice, but during live play, we weren't masking. Does that make sense? So the mask mandate from the governor's office came after the fall season was over. It was November 15th, if I recall correctly. So at that point, like our football players would wear masks on the sidelines and our volleyball players would wear masks on the sidelines, but they could remove to play. So I'm sorry, I need to correct that.
But just recently with basketball, we did, and you just reiterated that our student athletes wore theirs.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So the last question is if they don't wear them, we'll ask them to wear them, the opponents, but if they don't, we'll play the game. Is that accurate?
Does anybody object to that?
No, I'm
Any
fine with that.
questions? Okay. Any other thoughts?
Volleyball, you do have the net, and you're not as mixed maybe as basketball. So that could be a
Right.
consideration of the board.
So I'm just going to read, and then we'll get into we'll get into the the spectators. Excuse me, but just to reiterate that one more time, and if any board member disagrees or I missed that, let me know. But basically, all coaches on the benches must mask. All of the student athletes at Ambridge will mask. We will ask any opponents to mask. However, if they aren't willing to, which we hope they will, we will still play the game. We won't forfeit it. So on to spectators then. I think Addie gave you some information that some people, obviously we have, the capacity limits were sent out to the board. So, there's going to be the student athletes, the coaches, the game folks, and then what's left out of that. What I think, and Addie, you can jump in here, what was being done before was we were giving either 2 or 4 tickets they weren't actually tickets, but they were guest list passes. Is that right?
Correct.
Which for indoor was it? Was it 2 or 4?
The last with girls volleyball was our indoor, and they were doing 2 for visitors. They were doing 4 for the home student athletes. Basketball, we had to not allow visitors because our capacity was so low. But we are to the point where we could return to what the board did in the fall for example, soccer, which was 4 for our student athletes and 2 per visiting student athlete. So you could return to that if you wanted to do that.
Is that the direction of the board? 4 tickets for art, not necessarily tickets, but passes, however they do that.
Right, 4 guests. Mm-hmm.
I'm in
I'm
agreement.
fine with that.
I'm fine with that as well.
2 for the visitors.
I'm good. Agree.
Okay. Now, some of these things are a little more difficult, just to be transparent and honest, and we're going to take a walk or a visit of the fields here, in particular baseball, and we'll try to come up with some creative ways, because it's not as easy when you're talking about, baseball fields to be able to, decide how many people are coming in, because there really isn't a gate that people are allowed to come in and out, similar to what we do with cross country and those kind of things. I mean, I think Addie visited those events, and for the most part, the crowd seemed to be masked and spread out, and there wasn't an abundance of crowd. What I suggested is if we do start to have an issue where we are having larger crowds, then we're going to have to think about, some alternative plans to bring to you to try to figure out how we create that. But if not, and people are able to distance 6 feet and have a mask, and the crowds or the fans are manageable, then I think that's where we're at this given point. Would you agree, Addie?
Yes. So we have to, for example, with the bench size, we were able to make the bench sizes bigger for basketball and volleyball. If you saw the live stream, or if you saw the match in person, with a baseball dugout and a softball dugout, it's a little more complicated. So, because the space is small, so we're having to take a look at those and see what we can do. Track, we should be fine. And volleyball will continue with our large bench area.
Does anyone have any with monitoring that at this point? And if it looks like we are getting too large of a crowd or too many people, that we would have to come up with some other parameters that would include, maybe temporary fencing or something that allows people to come in and out of the venue and space them out accordingly. But if in large part we have, knowledge and people understand that we have to wear masks and we have to socially distance, and if we don't get a large crowd, we feel that it's outdoors, and we should be okay. Does the board, anyone have a problem with that from the board?
I think we should be okay, but I would hope that with our track team getting bigger and, with our coaches doing an amazing job, I hope that later on within our season, that we'll have to look at more venues to get more seating for them, because I think our track team is phenomenal. And I think that they'll be getting more spectators soon. So, but right now I think that, we do have we have a big track team, and, with our meet getting ready to start, I think that they are going to have a bigger crowd. So they may need more benches, because right now with the field being at the junior high, there isn't a lot of space for visiting teams. So I think it's going to be, at some point in time, we are going to have to look at that to accommodate for them. But for right now, I think we are okay.
When we
Okay.
did cross-country in the fall, we took a Google map and we designated spaces for people to be. And we'll continue to do that. I met with Coach Mysick today about that, and I just did a track team meeting really quickly before I came into this one today. So
Yeah, I'm part of the track board for that as well.
Yeah.
I just couldn't be part of that one because I'm
Yeah.
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we have plans, and we have pictures, and we will color code them. Okay.
I just want to make sure, like I said, I'm all for it. I know our track team is going to do very well. And I want to make sure that everyone's aware we're going to do very well. And we're going to get, our track team is going to bring big crowds as well. So I'm putting that out there. So.
Thank you.
All right, I think those were the issues we went over. Anything, Addie, thank you for that update. Anything that you think that we did not address moving forward here?
Yep. I think we're fine. Thank you so much for your input.
Thank you.
Thank you, Addie, for all of your information. Okay, before we move forward to public comment, Ms. Turnbull, could you speak a little bit on our meetings and going back, if you would, before we move forward?
No, I'm happy to. So as everyone who's present can tell, here we are, and we are 100% virtual right now for this public meeting. There was a moment last week where I think we all kind of held our breath to see whether any of the orders coming out of either the governor's office or the Department of Health would dramatically open things up in terms of capacities. We saw that little bump up for both inside and outdoor spaces, which does have a collateral effect on our meetings. So that opened up a little bit, but not enough so that we could all safely gather together. We do also see one of the things that still hasn't changed from the Department of Health or from Governor Wolf is truly an order that is an encouragement that's close to an order, that to the extent that workplaces are virtual, that employers should and truly must continue to operate virtually, which is kind of another place where we look at that as a touchstone to figure out what we should be doing. It is with great hope that in the next 6 to 8 weeks that most of us, and certainly all of our educators, will have access to the vaccine should they want to have it. We are hopeful that as spring begins to develop, that the board will be in a position to make that shift from these virtual meetings to in person. But right now, believe that this is still the best option to include the most number of people in a meaningful way together with the help of this technology. I will say from experience that mixed in-person meetings with virtual ones where the public is virtual and the elected officials are in a room, usually on one of these screens rather than individually, it is incredibly difficult and seems to be more frustrating for the public in general, because it's harder for them to understand who is speaking and and oftentimes to hear. So I this month President Fisher consulted with me, and it did seem like this was still the right way to go. But as with all things, we have an eye towards the horizon, and with hope that we can get together really soon. I miss being in a room with all of you. So hopefully in the next couple months, we'll be able to do that.
Thank you, Megan. All right, moving forward to public comment regarding agenda items only. In light of the state declared disaster emergency, the board has adopted modified public meeting and public comment processes consistent with the Sunshine Law. These modified rules have been published in a newspaper of general circulation on the district's website. Public comment will only be taken in written formats via email in advance of the meeting. Public comments received in advance will be circulated to the board. All public comments regarding agenda items will be read during the meeting. All other comments will be summarized during the meeting. All comments must include the resident property owner's name and address. Moving forward to legislative action for this meeting, finance and budget. Ms. Pedigo was unable to attend this evening. Mrs. Manganello, could you take that, please?
Thank you, Mrs. President. I move for the adoption of item number 1 on the stage contract for finance and budget.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Angus. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
Yes.
Miss Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Moving forward to personnel, Mr. Angus.
Yes, I would move this evening for the adoption of items 1 through 3 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Metz. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
Yes.
Miss Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. I'm going to go forward to salary schedule and labor relations. And this is Mrs. Curtis's committee, actually. And then we will move, June, and then I can ask you to read the public comment after that, okay?
Okay.
Did you hear me, June? Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mrs. Curtis.
I move for the adoption of items 1 through 2 as presented this evening.
A second.
Thank you, Miss Young. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
Yes.
Miss Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, June, if you could read public comment.
Okay, I have a public comment regarding agenda item from Jennifer Stetson, Economy. I am urging you to get involved and analyze the school musical program. Myself and the parents of the cast have many questions regarding viewing and financing of the school musical. This year, we have been told we are not allowed to attend performances and that they will be recorded. Then the school has informed us that we will have to buy tickets to watch the recording online at set times on March 26th, 27th, and 28th. I reiterate, we have to pay to watch a video of our children's performance. Meanwhile, sports have been free to attend this year, often in person, and if not via live stream due to the pandemic. Additionally, there are many discrepancies as to the budget for the school musical. Prior to 2019, the school paid for the rights and the director's salaries, and then the musical boosters ran the ticket sales and used the money to pay for the many expenses, which include musician, backdrops, sets, set rentals, costumes, and props. I was pleased to work with the former business manager in 2019 to bring the ticket money to the school under the understanding that they would take over the expenses, and that is what happened in 2019 and 2020. This year, we were made aware that there is no budget for the school musical beyond the salaries of the directors. The directors have asked the boosters to help and pay for over 2,000 expenses that the school has refused to pay this year. The boosters' traditional method of fundraising rely on in-person performances. We do not have audience to have 50-50s, concession stands, Chinese auctions, so we are limited in our ability to fundraise this year. I am asking, how is it possible that the school had a budget for the rights, directors, and expenses in 2019 and 2020, and this year there was no budget for the musical beyond the director's salaries? Ticket sales were $22,800 last year. Why was funding taken away from the school musical? I urge you to make reviewing the school musical a top priority. We cannot lose any more students to Lincoln Park because of our lack of support to the arts. Here are my questions. Are all activities self-funding? Does every sport sell enough tickets to cover their expenses? In the school budget under student activities, there is over $900,000 allocated. Is none of the allocated to the school musical? The musical can only exist if there are enough tickets sold to pay for itself. Why can we not attend performances with limited attendance like sports? Why are sports free to attend this year, but the musical parents must buy tickets? The musical is set to film this week. We really need answers. Please help.
Dr. Pascarello?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, in general, to answer, some of the questions, I'm not exactly sure what's happened in the previous years, but it's typical, much along with the musical, much like many of our sports and other activities, that they're, that the ticket sales that are sold create revenue that are donated back to the district. Oftentimes, that ends up indicating still coming in as a loss, which is fine, because we want to offer these things for our students, both all activities, sports, musical, all those things. As far as this year goes, and talking a little bit about why we're doing it the way we're doing it, obviously with COVID regulations, it was something that administration met with the director of the musical, Mrs. Zupsik did, asked her to come up with an excellent way that would be a safe way that we can guarantee that we would be able to do this. She produced a plan, which I'm grateful for. I really appreciate that. And to allow our students to make sure that we had a way to showcase their talents and have this experience. And when she did that, I brought that to the board, and we talked that over, and we agreed that that's how we would do it for the current school year. And as well as probably everyone, we're excited to see that occur and come to fruition, and get to showcase our kids and watch that virtually. So that's kind of where we're at, but it is often where ticket sales do go back to the school district as a form of revenue, and oftentimes that helps offset costs, but don't completely pay for the cost. As far as budgets and revenues, we know that's been difficult on both ends, meaning we know that the boosters across the board have not been able to have their typical fundraisers, although many have tried to be as creative as possible to do things in this environment to raise some money. And we also know from the district's point of view that, there's been additional cost and things haven't come in quite the way we had hoped to. So we thought, in working with the director and taking her suggestions, that this would be a way to keep our students safe and allow them to participate and engaged. And I think that's important, and we're looking forward to that happening. As far as specifics as the budget would go, I think moving forward, if there is some questions in and around how much is going to be budgeted and so on and so forth, I think it's going to be important that the board has some discussion about what the total budget would be, both from the personnel and overall budget expenses for the musical. And that would be then reviewed with the high school administration, and sit down and meet with the director to talk about how much is going to be in the budget for future years so they can plan accordingly. I think that's something moving forward post-COVID that would be a good idea. And I'll ask the board if you guys would be willing to talk about that with me, and then we could get back to high school administration and director. So we're all on the same page moving forward. That will be our goal.
Thank you, Dr. Pascarello. Ms. Turnbull, we did discuss a little with the sports as far as we were not charging admission for tickets. If we choose to do so tonight, do we need a motion for that, or can we just say that will be our move, that we will allow one ticket per performer in the musical as a one-time only for this year?
Yeah, I think a motion would. I think so long as there's consensus, and this is an opportunity, just as we conclude the voting portion of the meet and discuss, if it's the consensus of the board that you'd like to move in that direction for this 1 year as a COVID related accommodation of sorts, for access for parents. I think if you want to kind of toss it out to the board and see if there's any objection, and hearing none, I think that gives the administration the directions that they need in order to proceed.
Very good. If there is no objection from the board, if we would like to move forward with allowing one ticket per performer for this year for the musical. Do I have any objections? Does anybody have an objection to that? Nope. Okay. Very good. Dr. Pascarello, if you could take care of that with Ms. Supsik.
Yeah, so my only comment on that, and I don't anticipate a problem, is Mrs. Zupsik will reach out to the company and figure out how the district would offset one ticket per student for their family to be able to watch one of the streaming shows that are presented.
Thank you.
As long as we don't have a problem, and I don't see why we would, we'll proceed with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to make sure that's reiterated. It's one show on one day.
I did. Oh, yes. That is correct. Does anybody have an issue with that? One show for the one day?
No, I don't have an issue with that, but isn't there people behind the scenes that maybe their parents want to watch? Would they get a ticket too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Any
it's
of the
everybody
stage
that's
crew?
involved.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So then,
Thank
do we
you,
need a
Ms.
motion so that's clarified?
You know what?
Megan is. Go ahead, Megan.
For the sake of clarity, let's frame it as a motion there. That way, that
Sure.
the administration is crystal clear about what the
Very
direction
good.
is.
Kathy, I would like to make a motion to permit one night virtual ticket to every performing arts student involved in the 2021 school musical.
Thank you, Mrs. Manganello.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Curtis. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. June, you have another letter to read, correct?
I do. I have a comment that is it's not related to an agenda item. So I'll go ahead and summarize this. This is from Kelly Olenek, Economy Township. Mrs. Olenek is writing as a concerned parent and teacher that the elementary students need to go back to school 4 days a week. The school calendar was not set up for Fridays to be additional school days. There are too many Fridays off. I am a biology teacher at Central Valley High School, and our district is comparable to Ambridge. CV has been open 5 days a week since January 26, with students having the option to do virtual. There was a study done by the CDC that there is not significant spread of COVID in schools. The COVID numbers are steadily decreasing and will continue to do so with the vaccine rollout and weather turning warmer. Please make a plan to have all elementary students back full-time by April 1st. And that's all the comments I have.
Thank you. Dr. Pascarella, would you like to offer some comments on that correspondence?
Well, thank you. Thank you for your comment. It is appreciated. I know that our reopening committee will be meeting prior to our actual voting meeting, as we have typically been doing. So we will have a meeting, and at the close of that meeting, we will discuss, your comments as well as other people's opinions on the issue, and then eventually come with a recommendations committee that I will present at next week's meeting is the plan. And then ultimately the board will decide next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving forward, the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. At this given point, as I've said, typically, I really do want to thank our staff and our parents and everyone who's helping to make our transition back to the hybrid education that we've been doing successful. It's gone the best that it possibly could go. And that is in due part to all of our staff and parents and students' efforts to make sure that this is successful. And just very, very proud of that. And thank you for to share that.
Thank you. Moving forward to the solicitor's report.
I have no action items for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor to adjourn the meeting and reconvene the meeting discussed.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Moving forward to the meet and discuss board meeting. The meet and discuss board meeting of the Ambridge Area School District is held on Wednesday, March 10, 2021. This meeting is being held to go over the agenda for the regular monthly board meeting that will be held on Wednesday, March 10th, 2021 at 7 p.m. virtually. This meeting is being recorded for district purposes. It is or may be published in part or in its entirety on the district's website without the express permission of meeting participants. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus?
Here.
Mrs. Curtis?
Here.
Mrs. Kehoe?
Here.
Mrs. Manganello?
Here.
Mr. Metz?
Here.
Ms. Young?
Here.
Mrs. Fisher?
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. Any other correspondence this evening?
No correspondence.
Thank you. We do not have any student teacher recognition or presentations. And we have read all of the comments, correct, June?
Yes.
All right. Committee reports, education and technology, Mrs. Manganello.
Thank you, Mrs. President. Number one in education and technology is the Western Psychiatric Hospital agreement, where the district would be in agreement to pay for students to go to Western Psych partial hospitalization. Do I have any questions for that? I had one question that I did follow up with in that, and I was asking, and if Megan, when you review this, I have found that it's not always necessary to sign this contract, and you can still have students serviced at Western Psych. Okay. So if we can double check on what I believe, I don't know that this is a contract that would be a good move for the district on something that we don't have to pay for.
Okay, I will, let me look at that. And I can see that there is language that this approval, I mean, we still have a week to get there, and then it will also be subject to solicitor review. So let me see if I can give you feedback in that intervening week, and we can see what the board wants to do with that information. So thank you for that feedback.
Thank you. Also in education and technology committee, we have category 2E rate funding. It's recommended to approve the purchase of wireless access points for Economy and Highlands School District. And then any number 2 and 3 kind of go together. Category 1E rate funding, it's recommended to approve the contract between Ambridge Area School District and GoNet proceed to renew our current contract for our fiber connection. Any questions or discussions there? Thank you.
No, thank you. Mrs. Manganello, would you please take finance and budget this evening? Ms. Pedigo isn't here.
Yes. For finance and budget, we have number 1, our monthly school bills and salaries as notated below, along with number 2 of the cafeteria monthly bills and salaries. Any questions on bills and salaries? Number 3, the repository of the different land parcels are listed below. Any questions? Number 4, the Beaver Valley Intermediate Unit budget for the 2021-22 school year as listed below. Any questions? And number 5, the audit engagement of the agreement between the school district and Hozak, Specht, Utzel, and Wood for financial and real estate. Any questions there? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Manganello. Building and grounds, Mr. Angus?
There is nothing for discussion this evening.
Thank you. Athletics, Mr. Campbell was unable to attend. We have nothing to report this evening. Public relations, Mr. Metz?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Steering and rules, Mrs. Kehoe?
Okay, all of these are a third reading. Item number 1 is policy 103, discrimination/Title IX, sexual harassment affecting students. And it is to provide an equal opportunity for all students to achieve their maximum potential through the programs and activities offered in the schools without discrimination. Are there any questions on that? Item number 2 is policy 113.1, discipline of students with disabilities. It is to develop and implement positive behavior support plans and programs for students with disabilities who require specific interventions to address behaviors that interfere with learning. Any questions? Item number 3, policy 113.2, behavior support. It is to ensure students with disabilities shall be educated in the least restrictive environment in accordance with their individualized educational program. Any questions? Item number 4, policy 113.4, confidentiality of special education student information. It is to protect the confidentiality of personally identifiable information in the education records of students with disabilities. Any questions? Item number 5, policy 122, extracurricular activities. It is to recognize the educational values inherent in student participation in extracurricular activities and supports the concept of student organizations. Any questions? Item number 6, policy 123, interscholastic athletics. It is to recognize the value of a program of interscholastic athletics as an integral part of the total school experience for all district students. Is there any questions? Item number 7, policy 123.2, sudden cardiac arrest, is to ensure the safety of students participating in the district's athletic program. Item number 8, policy 218.3, discipline of student convicted/adjudicated of sexual assault. It is to recognize the importance of a safe school environment for students who are victims of sexual assault. Are there any questions? Item number 9 is policy 252, dating violence. It is to maintain a safe, positive learning environment for all students that is free from dating violence. Is there any questions? That's all I have, Madam Secretary. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Legislative, Ms. Young?
Nothing to discuss at this time.
Thank you. Salary schedule and labor relations, Mrs. Curtis?
Nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Sunshine Law, June?
Board of School Directors held an executive session on Wednesday, March 10th to discuss personnel matters subject to attorney-client privilege and other confidentiality laws, litigation or threatened litigation matters.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Young. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, have a great evening. Thank you for attending tonight.
Thank you. Have a good
Night.
evening.